My experience with sickle cell disease has been a difficult one. Diagnosed at birth, most of my life really going through the motions, up and down, mostly downs. Living with sickle cell, it gets really hard. There's just pain that lingers all the time. Yeah, I was constantly in and out of the hospital from probably September to April. Just admissions, hospitalizations, ER visits. And there were periods in my life where I couldn't even get off the bed. I had given up, basically, and to me I was just existing, and I was actually looking forward to, hoping it would end. My support system has been my wife. For so long, Amanda had told me, hey, listen, your goal in life is just to survive. At this time, Amanda wasn't pregnant, so I feel bad for saying this, but I really did not want to be here. As soon as we got the good news that my wife was pregnant, everything, it was literally like a switch. Like, my mindset completely changed. I gave up on giving up. I had this excitement for life that I never had before. Then I started researching gene editing. At the time when I was infusing, I was just numb that after all these years, this is, potentially where it all comes to an end. And just enjoying looking at the room around me, almost like a new birthday, I'd say. Since having gene therapy, the difference is night and day. We've had Sebastian and things are going well. We're home and I'm just living life to the fullest, energized, and we wanted to have more kids, so we specifically went and tried for twins. I don't think I'd have been able to do that if I had sickle cell. There's no way I would have won that battle, so I felt extremely confident that this gene therapy is really giving me an opportunity to live out my dream of being a father. Let's go get more kids. My advice to anyone seeking gene therapy is don't be afraid. This could definitely give you the life you're looking for.
Hi, I'm Amanda Cook. I have 2 children with SMA, one Jackson, one Weston. Jackson was originally diagnosed with SMA in 2017 at 5 months old. We stayed in the hospital until the new year, and in February he passed away due to no treatment to SMA at that time. Four years later, Weston comes along, and little did I know at the time he was going to be SMA type 1 as well. I knew that he was going to have SMA. It was just an initial gut feeling, mom instinct, I guess, and later confirmed with amnio, and then of course later confirmed with newborn screening, thankfully. That proceeded to me jumping the gun and going ahead and getting the ball rolling with gene therapy and getting all that going. When Weston received the treatment, like I said, it was a weight lifted off my shoulders as soon as that button started. A healthy 11-day-old baby getting this awesome treatment and just waiting for the outcome of what would happen. With Weston, the way he is reaching all of his milestones is absolutely amazing. He's walking, talking, eating, running, playing baseball. So he's doing phenomenal, and those things are absolutely a miracle. It's unreal to see an SMA child running, walking, talking, doing normal kid activities, and it's also heartbreaking just because of the last experience. I'm just happy to see him being able to thrive like a normal 2-year-old, be able to play with his friends at daycare or his cousins, and he shouldn't be. Potentially, medically, he should not even be here just because of a diagnosis. Knowing how new gene therapy is, and it's a once-in-a-lifetime treatment, it's absolutely amazing. We're so thankful that we were able to receive it. Okay, blow him a kiss. Tell him bye.
Wow, what a way of kicking off our last day, the meeting on demand in Rome. Indeed, patients are our true north. We would like to thank you all for joining us. And these 3 days, we're going to have a last session, in some panels. Today, I'm going to start with Peter and his co-panelists talking about experience in Sweden, how research collaborations between private and public payers are trying to find solutions for patients like the ones that we have just seen. Peter.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Paolo, and thanks to the entire ARM team for giving me and my friends here on the scene the opportunity to entertain you a little bit this last morning. And I must start to say that I'm really amazed. I'm amazed about this meeting. It has been absolutely fantastic. I think we are in a beautiful part of the world, in a fantastic city, in a fantastic hotel, and I have had so much fun these 2 days. And I met Mark this morning, and I asked Mark at ARM, how are you today? And he said, I'm relatively good. And I think that is exactly what we all feel today. We are relatively good, right? Because if you are perfectly fine the last day, it has not been a good conference, right? So I think we are relatively good here. But I'm also amazed about what we just saw in these 2 video clips. That's exactly why we are here, right? I mean, we are many different backgrounds and skills and whatever, but the only reason we're here is to end up in those type of situations that we just saw. And I think that is what is really fantastic. But there is also a lot needed to reach to those type of situations where you can meet the patients after you have treated them and you can see that your treatment, your regenerative medicine treatment is really making a difference. So that's why we're here, and that's what is the big challenge, I think. It is many years of hard work, and it takes a lot of different activities and skills and people and money and whatever to go there. And that's the theme of what we are going to talk about today. We are going to talk about how we can go from an early idea to really the type of situation we just saw. So this is a discussion, and we will discuss, and we will also allow you to discuss a little later. So in a few minutes, you will be presented to Elsa and Elias. So I will start. I'm Petter. I'm the CEO of a company called VERIGRAFT. And I haven't been in exactly the same situation as we saw here, where you are getting a baby from no return to a new life. But I have recently seen patients going from a really, really bad quality of life to something much better, and that is fantastic. But on the way there, it took us 10 years, my company. We had a lot of challenges, and we had a lot of sort of crossroads where we had to take decisions. And to give you one example, the day when we were thinking about starting our clinical trial program, none in our company have done that before, and we were thinking about what is needed now, and we realized there was so much needed. We needed, in our case, we needed donated human material. We needed someone that could manufacture on clinical quality. We cannot do that ourselves. We needed a CRO. We needed hospitals. We needed doctors, and in our case, surgeons, that were willing to really take part of this, because if you have never done this in a human being before, you really have to pick people that believe in this and that have the right skills and the ambitions and the enthusiasm to do that. So we realized we are a small company in Sweden, and this was 5 years ago. We couldn't find that in Sweden. So we had to leave Sweden, and we found at that time what we needed on the other side of this continent in Spain, so not far away from Italy. And that was a success for us, because we have done now more than half of the patients in our first-in-man trial in Spain. But that was a decision, and that is something we would like to discuss today, how we can improve, how we can make the ecosystem for creating an ATMP much better, and what is needed, and how can we do to make life easier for the therapy developers, so that we can end up with more examples like this. So now to the more important people than me, so Elsa and Elias. We are all three doing our business in Sweden at the moment, but we are from different places. So please, Elsa, can you start to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Petter. Good morning, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here today. Thank you for the invitation. It's been a great event, and it's great to see how things are evolving. And it seems like the progress seems really slow when we just look at the last 6 months. But when we put everything together, it's actually amazing to see how we have evolved and how many people we are actually treating. So I currently work in AstraZeneca. I'm based in Gothenburg, Sweden. I've been there for the last 2.5 years, leading a team focused on early translational, early manufacturing, early process development, really with the aim of trying to build the bridges between the early research and what would be the future CMC manufacturing of these therapies, with the notion that this is an iterative field because it's really new, but we do need to reduce the number of iterations, and by bridging the different bits of the process together, then hopefully we are in a better position to reach faster the patients. I joined AstraZeneca coming from the MHRA in the UK, so I have been in the regulator, and I have been in academia as well for a really long time. I did a postdoc in the pure developmental biology group, and I'm a chemical engineer by training. So as you can imagine, I speak a bit of all the different languages that are needed. I probably don't know enough in detail of all of them, but that is hopefully a good position to be able to build these bridges and try to take us further in our quest to treat patients. So really happy to be here and looking forward to the discussions.
Thank you. So Elias.
Good morning, everybody, and I would just like to reiterate how fantastic this conference has been and how nice it is to see this many people actually waking up early morning on, well, it's not that early, I guess, but early enough at least. I'm here today representing academia on this panel, and I've had at least the majority of my career being in academia, pretty much born and raised with cell and gene therapy development from my early days, doing a Ph.D. at Karolinska Institute. Developing cell and gene therapies is incredibly difficult, and when you're faced and doing it in academia, you really realize all the shortages of skills and competence that we often are working with. I was recruited to CSRM after that and really got a very good insight into the different approaches that you can solve those shortcomings in competence with. And that led up to the idea of actually taking the core essential parts of these ecosystems and bringing that expertise into academia in the early stage, where we actually can make quite large changes flexibly and very cost effectively in process development or GMP manufacture or sourcing, licensing, license-friendly technologies, etc. So currently we're setting up what we call a pre-GMP facility at Lund University in Lund Stem Cell Center, a little bit to bring in that key competence that we believe can actually bring academic developed cell and gene therapies onwards to clinical trials and later also setting them up for possibilities of commercialization effectively.
Very good. So I think what we all three are saying is that we have been so pleased with this conference. We feel like a family together with all of you. And it's so great when you come to a conference, you don't know more than 5% maybe, but when you leave the conference, you feel that you know half of the participants. So a big family. I think ARM is very useful and very helpful in helping us feeling like a family. And I think it's important. We are talking about collaboration, but still we are different pieces in this big sort of map towards treating patients. So we are going to discuss that now. And as Elias said, he's coming from academia, and that is, of course, typically the first steps when you're thinking about going from the early ideas up to commercialization. So Elias, can you elaborate a little bit more about the role of academia and how early ideas can be taken care of there? Yeah.
I think academia is very much simmering with fantastic ideas and innovation, particularly so in the field of cell and gene therapies. I will talk about what I actually know very well, and that's what we have ongoing in Lund University. Lund Stem Cell Center was started 20 years ago with the idea of investigating the tools of cell and gene therapy and see how they can actually be turned into cell and gene therapy candidates. In those 20 years, we now have 26 cell and gene therapies under development at the Institute, and we see them all over the spectrum from discovery all the way into phase 1 clinical trials. And this, of course, poses us with a lot of challenges. As I said earlier, we really do lack a lot of the interdisciplinary expertise of later stage development, such as industry and ideas of how to commercialize or scale. These things have often been quite inadequately addressed in academia. And I think that's the challenge for us moving forward, is how can we in a very cost-effective way get into these projects, coach them a little bit with regulatory, with how they're supposed to set up their GMP manufacture, and how we can look at process development to ensure that these therapies can be scaled once we reach to phase 3 clinical trials. But I think one important part of the lesson that we've had is that we might actually need to have some form of GMP manufacturing expertise in academia, partly so we can actually coach the developers in a proper way, but then also we've seen one therapy that's actually entered into clinical trial and soon another one that's been manufactured from academics. So we believe we need that support in-house to push these therapies forward so they actually come to the patient and not just stay as a fantastically cool idea on a lab bench somewhere.
So then we understand the role of the early days for a project in academia. And typically in this ecosystem, there are small companies either being formed in the academia or being taking up those ideas and trying to bring them on in the value chain. So I'm representing the small industry here, and typically we are very good in doing the preclinical studies and maybe also the early clinical studies. But at some time point, I think us small companies, we are hoping that one of the bigger players are being interested in us. So I'm a bit curious to ask Elsa what you are looking for when you are scouting projects and ideas or even companies, and how do you see when the big companies should come in, and how much can you do internally?
I think there's no recipe or unique recipe, I would say, for that. I think when we look at delivering these new medicines, it's all about a balance between innovation and speed. We need innovation. We need, I would say, combinatorial innovation. But we also need to be quick, not only because patients are needing, but because there's a lot of competing medicines. So we need to actually be there and reach there first. And so that balance means that you do need to interact and network where the expertise is and bring all the different players together. So relying on just doing innovation means that you'll be slow. If you want to be as quick as you can, probably you won't have a commercial product because you'll need to pay too much because innovation is from everyone else. So that balance is really critical. And I think this is where this type of meetings and also these initiatives such as ARM and other initiatives are really important on bringing people together so that we understand, how do we partner up to reach the proper balance of this innovation plus quick way to reach patients.
Very good. So first, Elias, when you hear me and Elsa speak, we come from the industry, and when you in your daily work are interacting with industry, how do you see that? Do you think it's working today? Is there something lacking, or that interface is that?
I think it's something we can do a lot better, and I'm actually not going to put this on the industry for once. I think academia actually needs to step up to some degree. We see a lot of the developers that have these really good ideas, but they're not really able to talk to industry in a language that industry or biotech actually understands. We have had some projects of bringing up and coaching the developers, putting together slide decks with the kind of information that would be of interest for biotech or industry to actually look at. And also, I find a lot of concern when I meet the developers in the academic stage of what they're actually able to disclose to a larger entity. There's a lot of concern that their great ideas will be stolen and kind of commercialized by the big evil pharma. And I don't think that is the case, but it can be these quite simple things that if the researchers are coached, I think we can really, really improve that interface. And we have a lot more projects ongoing in academia than I think we actually know about. You often hear about those 20% of PIs that are really forward and really enjoy discussing process development and go to conferences that are a little bit out of scope and more towards commercialization or manufacture. But then we have 80% of the projects where there tends to be a focus on developing the newest cool idea, testing it in animal models, and seeing how you can improve it. And I think there's a lot of therapies there that gets trapped in academia. And a big question for me is how can we push those forward as well, so we don't lose out on that fantastic concepts. And I also really liked what Elsa said here, that it's a balance between how fast you move forward and how and when the time is ripe, particularly looking at licensing. This is something that very few people in academia often discuss. You want to use the coolest and the newest tools, and you throw them all together, and in the end, you're going to have to find licensing agreements with several different companies, and you'll end up with a product that's basically not going to be commercializable down the line. But those things can be solved. You can look for alternatives, but somebody actually needs to inform you of that before you go all the way to a phase 1 clinical trial, for example. So I think that's something that we're going to work with moving forward.
And the same question over to you, Elsa. If you look at Elias and the academia, is there something you are missing or that you would like to see more of or less of, or that we need in that interface?
We are already doing a bit, and I think probably with those 20% that you talk about, so there are collaborations. We have joint postdocs, joint PhD students with academic institutions. We have projects in place. I would say that one of the biggest challenges we face is that the two ends are not talking from the beginning. And by that I mean that the early research and the clinical, which is when you deploy the medicine, they have a lot of ideas, there's a lot of innovation, but this full line of sight from early stages is not there. And so we end up trying to fill gaps to be able to reach the output that we want. And I think this is really, really challenging, and this is where we can do much better. It's having that. And I think people think about having full line of sight, thinking that they need to do everything, and that's not the case. It's about just understanding what would be the end point so that you can prioritize what you are doing at different steps of your process. And I think this is where we can become better. In a way, industry has a lot of experience from other modalities, which is good, but also challenging because it's not always fit for purpose. So streamlining and adaptation is needed. And in big institutions, that's not always straightforward to achieve. And this is where then the interactions with smaller biotechs or academia can come in as a big advantage as well, in terms of being able to push those things faster, and then industry coming in at the stage where we can then push things in a quicker way forward.
Sorry. So thanks. Of course, this panel is by no means complete when it comes to the ecosystem of bringing an ATMP or an advanced therapy to the market. We also, of course, need authorities, patient organizations, hospitals, and that makes this ecosystem even more complicated. So is there anything on that end that the panel would like to touch base on or comment on? Or if not, we may just have a good bridge over to the next topic on our list here, and that is that we have seen over the years in all around the world, I think, but looking at Europe now, we have seen a lot of public activities, activities from the authorities trying to help us players here to make a better job. I'm thinking about the public-private partnership organizations. We have seen very strong initiatives in Europe, like the Cell and Gene Therapy Catapult in London. We have seen CCRM in Toronto. There is now a CCRM in Sweden called CCRM Nordic, or in the Nordic countries. And that is meant to be something that will help us developers here. So Elias, can you give us a little bit of your reflection about your interactions with these type of organizations over the years?
I think these organizations are going to make all the difference, and also having them somewhat close to the developers also help. We see CCRM Nordic now established in Sweden. We also have Northix Biologics, which is a sort of next stage commercial scale manufacturer. And having this expertise in the country, I think, is really going to be a fantastic thing. And it really gives us that next step from academia. I was working in CCRM Toronto before, and the projects we were working with, they were quite a lot more mature than the ones I'm working with in academia. So I really see fantastic synergies there, that if we can bring these projects long enough along the development to start asking these kind of questions, we need somebody with the real know-how, the skill, and the sort of muscles to actually work out how to scale and how to address these commercial challenges that we actually face. So I think it's absolutely essential to have these players in the ecosystem. So yes, I'm very excited about the developments, and I think we're going to have close collaborations with all of these actors moving forward.
Yeah. So going from academia to the small industry, I told you about my story where we had to leave Sweden 5 years ago to do our clinical development in Spain. And I think if those type of initiatives would have been formed or taken a bit earlier, we would never have needed to leave Sweden to do that. So I think today we have a much better situation in our home country for small companies like us. But how about the big companies? One can think that a big company can do everything internally, but I know, Elsa, that you and AstraZeneca have been strong supporters of the initiatives in Sweden. So can you elaborate a little bit on that?
And I think, I mean, you can say that you can do everything, but if you do everything, you won't do everything to the best, right? So I think each of us has their own roles. And I think the example of Sweden, and you have that in the UK as well, and in Canada as well, is that you have individual initiatives at different levels, at the academic level, at the translation, at the hospital level. But more than that is the push to connect these different initiatives with the understanding that you can be really good in academia, but you need to be connected to the next stage. You can be really good in the translational, but you need to be connected with the clinic. And the clinic can't really deliver medicines to patients without everything that is before that. And so it's that connection between the different players. So it's the ecosystem. And so we are very much promoting the ecosystem internationally, but obviously, you know, being myself based in Sweden and in the Nordics, it's really good to see this national cluster now being set in with the ability to extend to a Nordic cluster, but then the ability of that Nordic cluster to connect internationally with already obviously the links with CCRM, with the links with the Catapult, with other initiatives. And I think this is where we can make a difference. You know, of course we can make a difference in our own individual niches, but more than that, we can make a difference by connecting those niches. And so this is where I think these initiatives are really critical, and this is why we are very supportive of that.
So something that we have discussed when we had our pre-meetings here, Elsa, Elias and I, that is really about what we are talking about now, collaboration. There is no room for us sitting on our own small hills, I think, as we say in Sweden, and trying to do good here. We need to out and collaborate, and it's very important that it will not be competition between the different initiatives in different countries. And I think we have also touched upon now we think it's time to collaborate even globally. I mean, we have collaborated in Sweden, of course. We are maybe collaborating in Europe, but it's time now that we collaborate globally. And I hope you agree on that in the audience, that this is very important, because to develop an advanced therapy is really complicated and we need to collaborate. So time is flying. We have a few more important and interesting topics to discuss. Something that we have discussed is that another cornerstone is, of course, the people, the resources. So Elias, can you comment on that, how you see that, what we can do, what we are doing good now and what we can do even better when it comes to education and resources in this particular field?
Yeah, I mean, competence is obviously everything. If you put the right person in the right place with the right competence, I mean, I think we've all worked with those people and see what they actually can accomplish. And that's a difficult thing in a field which is expanding this rapidly. And certainly for academia to sort of come up with the kind of finances to pay salaries of these top individuals is not very easy. So I believe one of our core jobs will actually be to create this talent, to start educational programs that actually focus on cell and gene therapies and the unique challenges that we are facing there. But it also requires that a bit to know what we're doing. So having a bit of development in academia also helps with that, and educate the next generation of Ph.D. students that are going to be the leaders of the industry going forward. I think that's a very important job that we have to take very seriously as well.
And the same question to you, Elsa. How do you see it from the big company? I know that you are recruiting a lot lately in this specific field. So is it possible to find resources, and how do you see this?
I think it is challenging, and we all know that. And there's been a lot of initiatives trying to look into this matter and create a workforce and skill sets that are required for delivering these medicines. I think the challenge is you need skill sets at different levels. You need it on one hand to train people from maybe undergrad approaches to be able to look at standardization and traceability, not even GMP as not a nightmare, but something that will actually help you going forward. To then have also that training from a clinical setting and have everything in between. So looking at how we can start implementing that mindset from early stages is really important. I mean, it's already there, mostly from an engineering, I would say, mindset, not as much from a biology mindset, which is what we need to have it at this stage as well. So I think at this stage you end up, I don't know, stealing people from the same places all over again. So you kind of people go and rotate. It's part of the process. But we need to look forward and see how we can train and have that skill set available from the onset. I think things will also evolve and change quite rapidly. I think this is something that we didn't discuss when we had our pre-chat, but actually I thought about was afterwards, which was things may be different in 10 years' time when we have more closed systems, we have more automation. So I think more than thinking about the skills we need now, we should start thinking about what skills do we need in 10 years' time when we would have these processes much more fit for purpose from a commercial perspective. Because then we would be getting us ready for the future and not for the needs we have now, which may not necessarily be the ones we will need in 10 years' time.
Very good. So we have agreed on a few key things here. We have agreed that we need resources and people. We have agreed that we need to collaborate. So why not build on that now and bring up the magic cube? Do we have the magic cube? Yes, we have. So now it's time for you to comment or give us a question on this topic. Because time is flying, so I don't want to miss out. And now maybe we are, like Mike is saying, we are relatively good, so we are not good enough to give questions. Okay, that's fair enough. Last morning, we are all tired. So then I think there is one question here.
I can speak loud enough, probably.
Yep.
Let me give you the easy question. You know, when you compare Europe, since this is European, do you think that the US actually has advantages in its ecosphere versus Europe? Because clearly the main competitor, if you're a European-based pharma company that's spun out of an academic center, and I work for Autolus, which has a connection obviously with UCL, it is actually finding that right ecosphere that allows you to accelerate that process. So where would you say that the US does this better, and where do you think Europe has both to catch up but also has potential advantages?
That's a very good question. Thank you very much. I'm not sure if we are the perfect persons to comment on the US side, but I can start off and just saying from my perspective, I think the US arena over the years have had some things that we don't have had as good in Europe. One is, of course, financing and money around. So we have been lacking funds, I think, in Europe a little bit compared to in the US. I think you have much stronger patient organizations in the US, and they have been very important. Those are two things that I'm picking up. I'll leave the floor to you to comment on that.
No, I agree. I think financing and the industry mindset, I think it is stronger in the US, which in these new fields that need that industry mindset to take the medicines forward are really critical. I would say that because the US is as big as the entire Europe and a bit more united in terms of, we talked about a lot about the regulatory challenges by dealing with EMA and then each individual country within Europe versus the FDA in the US that I think also brings added challenges. But I think that's, I would say, something that can also bring us more together within Europe is to try to tackle that from an industry perspective and see how we can collaborate more. And again, going back to the topic of this panel, this is where the networking becomes really critical, because as unique countries or as companies that are based in unique countries and then having to deploy the medicines across different countries in Europe, if you do that alone, it will be really challenging. But if you do that as a collective, then your voice will be stronger. So not just talking about the regulators within Europe having to join themselves and have a unique voice, but I think the industry should do the same and to try to advance faster.
I think a little bit from the academics' point of view as well is financing. I mean, to some degree, when you set up process development space, which I'm tasked to do, it really helps when you can have the newest, coolest tools to actually play with. Closed automated systems and systems you can look into scale. We don't necessarily have the same access and the financing to get all of those newest, coolest systems always in Europe. I think that can be an issue also.
There was another question. Yep.
Hello, I'm Cecilia, and I would like to ask a question related to patient, because we do all for patients. But what we see is that we are moving to personalized medicine, and current setup of healthcare is not settled to identify patient and link them to the proper targeted treatment. How do you see, because this is, let's say, we develop the medicine for patient, but how do you see the transformation healthcare frame to adapt to the new opportunities?
I think one of the people we actually lack on the stage today is the hospital, and we work very closely to them. They're just across the street from Lund Stem Cell Center, and of course there's an idea there, like we really need to talk about those challenges as well. And that's something that I was completely unaware of coming from the academic perspective. When you sit down and now formed an Atmps center, they call it, in the university hospital to really forward the use of these products, and just hearing about the work they go through to implement market-approved Atmps, that explains quite a lot of why we see so few of the actual market-approved ones being administered to patients regularly. It's not an easy task either, so there needs to be organizations and there needs to be initiatives also in healthcare, and that also needs to be plugged into the ecosystem. But I do think we're starting to see various shapes of that in Sweden with organizations of these Atmps centers at the larger university hospitals that we're also interacting with a lot. Yeah.
So thank you very much for the very insightful questions. Our time is unfortunately out. I can just end up by saying that the three of us are extremely enthusiastic about the future. So if you will have a cup of coffee with us now, we are more than happy to continue the conversation and tell you more about all our enthusiasm. And I hope you are as enthusiastic about the field, the way we can treat patients, and the rest of this day of the conference. Thank you very much. So